All right, super. Well, I like to carry my brain around with me, just so you guys know, just in case I forget something. It's right here. You guys will get tired of hearing about the brain, probably with me, just because I'm fascinated with what the brain brings. But first I want to, here, let me get this little clicker thing out. There we go. My family. Many of you have already seen this picture, and I want to tell you, I know I'm a famous guy when I get home. That's when I know I'm famous. And that's because these two dogs come and wag their tail and bark and are super excited to see me. And for a moment there, I feel really, really good, boosts the confidence a bit. And she licks a ton, and he is just a really fun, unique personality dog. Now, we take the uniqueness of dogs and then transfer it to kids, and it becomes more complex. Kids are even much more complicated, and you know, they have their different stages of life. And in parenting, we want to help equip parents. The other day when I was at church, actually this was 2 weeks ago, I was getting ready to greet a new person. One of the elders came up to me and said, "Hey, Danny," put his arm around me. He said, "Hey, there's a new guy. Make sure you greet him." You know, he's an older guy, so he wants to make sure everybody feels welcome. And so I looked at him and I said, "Hey, I'd love to go say hello to him." So I'm getting ready to go to say hi, and then all of a sudden my son comes to me, and he has tears coming down his face. And I go, "What's going on?" He was sitting with the youth. He's 14, hormones hit, and you feel a little bit different emotionally. And he says, "Dad, can we go for a walk? I just need to talk right now." And I had already prepared myself, the message. I was looking forward to that. I was going to say hi to some friends in that moment. And I said, "Hey, yeah, Alex, let's go for a walk." So we walked, and I found some trails I've never seen. I've been there for 9 years now in this church, and there's some beautiful trails back there. And we enjoyed our time together, and he said, "Dad, how do I handle?" I used to think about battles when I was getting ready for bed. You know, just battles, like, and you could hear him in there making battle. It was intense battles that he was picturing. He had his own movies going. I was a little jealous of that. I didn't see the movie, but he had the movie going, and that's how he'd fall asleep. And he said, "Dad, I wish I could just sit or lay there and think like I did before, having just these battles and fun things like that. Now, all I can think of is girls, right? Girls are on my mind a lot." And this is weird. This is new. And he said, "There's just so much temptation, so much curiosity that I have. How do I handle this, Dad? How do I do this from here forward?" I said, "Well, all right, welcome to the world from here to 90, right? This is hormones, testosterone. We got to talk about what that all means and how that's good and how that's more difficult and how we can be engaged." So we created a plan for a daily interaction on this victory he was wanting. He wants to create victory in this area because he has a goal to be a husband and a dad that loves his family. That's what his goal is. But in the in-between time, there's a lot of distraction, a lot of potential for getting off track. And so as a dad, I need to be available to him. All right, here's our vision: to equip parents to disciple and mentor the next generation so they can thrive in Christ. And really, what I want you guys to catch vision of in this is that would be amazing. If we could equip parents to disciple and mentor their kids as a team, and I view each and every one of you guys as a team member. We're all in at Focus on the Family together. No one is better than the other. It's really just we're in this together. There's different positions within the one team. And so I respect when somebody brings an opinion or a thought. I love to hear that. We're all so unique and different, and many people have had different experiences. When I talk to parents, I know that a lot of parents could actually probably teach a class on parenting, and many do. The tricky part is we can teach it, but can we live it? That's when it becomes a difficult thing. In the middle of a game, you make a lot of mistakes. You see professionals do that in sports. Imagine if you think about with the culture and the way it's coming at the children, at our children, our kids, and just the many messages and interpretations. It may not even be a message. It may be an interpretation of a message, and that complicates it even more, right? Someone says something, and they're in a certain feeling, the kid is, and then they interpret something according to that lens, and that makes it really hard. In this case, our mission is to provide the world-class resources. I would add to this, and that would be easy to find on our website. that they can connect with and engage with. So that's really the mission, to provide the go-to resources in parenting. So we have right now, we've been targeting some of our downloads. How many of you have seen the downloads from Focus on the Family Parenting? How many? So a few of you. I would encourage you to look at them, and if you have feedback for us, please, good or bad. You know, we're not stuck on self-esteem there. We're really wanting to improve and grow. These are what's nice about downloads is we can change them, alter them, add to them, update them. It's a really good resource. It's free for parents, and it's all clumped into one. It brings good new names to us and engagement, and a tool that can be helpful for a parent. We want these downloads to be very practical. The most recent big one that we did as a team, and a very big success, was the Parent's Guide to 13 Reasons Why. The goal with that one is to be able to divide it into multiple sections eventually. Right now, 13 Reasons Why is a hot topic. But the topics of cutting, self-injury, sexting, those aren't going away. Depression, suicide, unfortunately, those are not going away. So we want to be able to divide those out, and that's how it's been written. So for now, it's called that. It's going to be divided out, and then we can have multiple small downloads for parents to have. We're still looking at how do parents engage with our downloads. Do they go to the download and then leave and just say, hey, I got my resource and I'm gone? Do they come back and say, hey, this is a worthwhile ministry. I want to engage further with the ministry, either through donation or looking at what other resources they have. And that's what we're hoping, is that they'll have a deeper engagement with us because they feel they got something valuable for free from us. The only string is they get emails from us giving them further, more content for them to look at. Let's see, the Fearfully and Wonderfully Made piece, again, focuses on the brain and the uniqueness of a child. And we're going to talk more about the uniqueness of children when we go into the personality assessment. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. This particular resource looks at the different ways that children connect with God or us as individuals. Some people like to go on a hike and connect very well with God, can focus and have their prayer time, and if they sit down with a book, they get distracted and lose focus. And then you have some that have to sit down and read and love that. And I hear over and over kids, teens, that feel that they were forced, it was a should, to have a relationship with Christ. And it's really a could. And let's figure out what that relationship could look like, because this is a relationship that you can benefit from. It's not a should because you have to. It turns into a chore instead of a relationship. And God gives us that language. He has steadfast love towards us. And what can be our response towards Him? And so this resource is about finding that way that your child truly connects with God and then fostering that, encouraging that. And there's 8 different ways. And those were identified by Gary Thomas. We want to further the research with that. How many have taken the assessment, the assessment of 7 traits of effective parenting? Just like 2 or 3? 4 maybe? Okay, 5, all right. I feel like an auctioneer. I would encourage you to just take the test, and what you'll notice is, yes, you're probably pretty high on most of the categories that are listed here. And that's important to understand as parents. I score, most parents that have taken it so far have said, well, I score really well on most of those. The weaker ones would probably be boundaries and limits for most of them. Some admit that gratitude gets thrown out the window sometimes. The idea is that things get in the way of this. One being communication. Communication can get complex. It takes a lot of time, takes attention, but also I think that the biggest factor that gets in the way of these is our own emotions as parents. The pace of life, stress, different things come in the way of being able to live out the traits. So we could have the skills and the abilities, and most parents do, but how do you live those out? And that's where the day-to-day engagement with Focus on the Family, helping them navigate the things that get in the way of living these out, is foundational. What we want parents to see is that the core to this is a strong relationship with Christ at the core of these 7 traits, because then you're teachable. That's an important component to being able to be effective. So we have Future You as one of the projects that's in the pipeline right now, and this is a preteen resource. We want to help parents be able to have engaging conversations about how to be an adolescent. What does that all mean, including sexuality, but also it has sections on who am I as a person, and that can start as early as 8 years old, 9 years old. That's in the part of the brain for a child at 8, 9 years old, the negativity kicks in. Many parents don't know that. And so you had a very positive child, and all of a sudden at 8, they're saying, I stink at this, I'm not good at this, I'm awful, because they haven't learned how to handle the idea of failing. And so that's an important component to know what is the identity. When I'm 8, who am I? Who am I in Christ, and what does that mean? And the idea of a constant growth. So at 8 or 9, some kids actually get stuck in that. They don't know how to handle the negativity as it floods their brain. The next component would be how to handle that failure, consequences, disappointment, emotions that are difficult to handle, because that is the flood at that time where the emotions begin to hit and thinking is not fully there. Usually emotions enter a room. When you guys entered the room, your emotions read it first. So whatever feeling you had, your thoughts began to follow that. And for kids even more so. It drives how they're going to engage in a room. Each of you are interpreting what I'm saying in your own unique way with your own unique experiences, right? So if I say apple, some may think, oh, a small one. Some may say a big one, maybe some a caramel apple. Some may think a green, some a red. There's a lot of room for interpretation. So for kids, disappointment, a variety of things that are hard to process, helping a parent enter that conversation with a child to help them understand, how do I handle this? What does this mean now? I failed at something. What do I do with that? And continuing the process into healthy relationships, then sexuality, and then the theology of sexuality. That's a big one. Why did God make our bodies? And for boy, girl, what does that mean? And then from there, we're going into now what in the external world? How do we handle social media? How do we handle all that? The next one is a book that continues its progress through the pipeline. Jim Ware back in the back has helped me with this process. We're trying to create a full experience from the 7 traits into personality differences, but more so the distractions that come in a parent's life, and how to manage those. And that is going to be tied to a personality assessment that it's a cross-culturally relevant personality assessment that parents can take. And I'll give you one of the categories is flexible versus inflexible. And I'm sure you've seen that in your teams. You have some that are very inflexible, but that just means they have very strong opinion. And then you have some that are very flexible that have very little opinion. And so the idea is, how can you learn in those personality types to come in the middle and learn how to have opinion and how to tone down your opinion? That takes love. That takes awareness. That takes being able to find value in the relationship and the team. In a family, the same thing. If there is inflexibility and flexibility, neither one's better than the other. They're the important tools, but how do you work together with those personality types to make the family the best it can be? So that's one of the categories of the several others that families can work with and work through when they take that test. So right now we're in the 7 traits category as far as a box. If you think about prepare, strengthen, and restore, those are our goals. I'm sure you've heard that over and over here. And the 7 traits is just the beginning. That's when you think, okay, I have the 7 traits. All right, well, one thing that gets in the way is the personality and communication, emotion. So that's where now the next assessment goes into that, and we begin to equip parents to handle those so then they can teach character to their children. And that we have Clubhouse Junior, Adventures in Odyssey. We have a lot of materials within the character. The part where I'm seeing it breaks down is that in-between box of personality and communication. Parents don't know how to handle those. They feel, okay, I think I've got the traits. Once they get in the game, it gets really difficult. And then you have children that are having a difficult time living out character in their relationships. So on the preparing, the reason we're going through prepare, strengthen, and restore, I think those are the 3 very logical categories for parents. They're preparing for many stages, but really just preparing to be a parent. And we want to make sure we're there for them when they're doing that. It's pretty intimidating when the child first comes out. We have a few people at church that have come up and said, how do parents survive sleep deprivation? Because I think I'm starting to hallucinate. And that is so true, right? I remember having my first diaper change at home. My wife had just a real difficult birth. And in the middle of the night, she woke up. Our son was crying. And I said, hey, honey, she was coming back from the bathroom. And I was excited that she was coming back because I had nothing to give my son. And he was crying really hard. He was clearly hungry. And I said, hey, honey, it's time to feed Alex. And she said, we have a baby? And she was really confused because she had a lot of drugs going on. And I said, oh, no, this is not good. I said, yes, we do. And I can't offer anything here, so I'm going to need you on this one because you've got the milk and I don't. So the next morning, I'm changing Alex's diaper, and all of a sudden I realized that this could be super expensive because it took me 5 diapers to get through one. I went in, and the air hits, all of a sudden there's a fountain, and then there's a little bit more fountain, and then there's a little bit of the other stuff, and then after that there's an explosion that hit my arm, went to the door about 3 feet away, and I said, what in the world did I get myself into? I wanted 10, and now I'm going, I think one's good enough. But I wanted 10, my wife wanted 0, and she did say, well, I told you so. See, this is why. This will going to be a lot of work. But she came by, she heard me say, wow, and then she was amazed by it as well after we cleaned it up. After that was the most diapers in one diaper change that I've done. So I was happy about that. I was thinking, wow, this is going to be really, really expensive. So the restore piece, this is one where I've been involved in a lot. And I see Yoli Brown from the counseling department. She's involved in that restoration as well, restoring families to understand each other once again and to learn how to communicate in a way that's loving and productive between families. Most of the time, families want things repaired. They just don't know how to do it. So it's really good to go into that with them. And many materials that we have right now are in the strengthen and a lot in prepare, and we want to strengthen the part that has to do with restoring relationships. Right now, in the prepare, strengthen, restore, our numbers have gone up really well since August of 2015. As you can see, all 3 numbers have gone up substantially, so we're on a good trajectory on the surveys when parents tell us, yeah, I feel more prepared because of the resources that Focus has given us, or I feel strengthened, or I feel my family is restored. We're trying to define these more specifically so that they don't look so big and so vague. We're trying to find these a little bit more so that the numbers mean something. But the prepare, strengthen, restore, just those topics themselves and seeing the numbers go up is a very, very good sign. We're heavily involved in the homeschool conferences. Homeschool parents usually are the note takers. I mean, they're on it. They want to be the best parents they can be. Very, very engaged, and I think they had a stigma of weirdness in homeschooling. But now I've gotten to know them. I went to a conference in Cincinnati, and it was 6,000. There were 6,000 parents there. I was surprised. Another one in Greenville was 5,000. And they were parents that were really normal. I mean, they wanted the best for their kids, and they were involved in groups, and their kids were wonderful. I got to meet some of them in the conference or the workshops that we were in. So we're going to be involved in that this year, 5 of them, and then Bob Waliszewski and Jesse Florea from Clubhouse and Bob from Plugged In will also be speaking at the homeschool conferences. So far, we've had great response on that. So radio interviews in our department, we are constantly doing radio interviews. Tomorrow morning, I'll do one live at 6:30 in the morning. When some of you guys may be eating breakfast at that time. That's one that is going to be on how adult daughters can still need a dad involved in their lives. And we get some great opportunities to speak into a lot of places throughout the country because of radio shows and radio topics from the PR team, like Andrew over here. They're great at finding topics that are trending, and we want to speak into those. And hopefully in the future we'll have a blog, we'll have other things that engage more readily with the things that are happening instead of mainly evergreen type of articles. So the blog space, as many of you guys know, is a space where we've stepped in slowly. We'll continue to develop podcasts and vodcasts. And one podcast I'm really excited to tell you about that's going to begin is one with Clubhouse Junior, where the stories are read, and that's with kids with that have disabilities or can't read, this is going to be a great way for them to listen to some of the stories of that month's magazine. So that's one of the examples of a test. We're also testing out or building out right now a parent's guide to 13 Reasons Why podcast. So we're hitting all the difficult topics that are in that download and testing out. If somebody gets a download, would they engage with a podcast? And then another one is the young parents podcast. So parents of children that are 0 to about 8, 9. And these are, when guests come in, we do some extras with those guests and with people here within the ministry. And it's hopefully a podcast we'll get really good engagement with. And then after that, we'll go to preteen podcast, maybe a teen podcast. On Twitter, we have a good following. We want to grow this. The next position that we'll have in parenting will focus specifically on growing our Twitter for parenting. Right now we have the Twitter for Focus on the Family, but for parenting, this has not gotten the attention that it could have. So then Make Every Day Count. A lot of Facebook fans with this, but this is one that's a completely different audience. It's not our target audience for Focus on the Family necessarily. So it's a broad scope. So we're trying to strategize on what we do with this Make Every Day Count. We have a campaign at Focus that you may have heard of, or maybe not, and that is Better Than Yesterday. And so we're thinking of combining these and saying, better than yesterday, how can I be a parent better than yesterday? And having our own ownership with that, with the Facebook Lives and Facebook page. These are the different sections under parenting that involve somewhere or another the parenting department. We have Resilient Kids. It's a different target audience. The schools, we're not heavily involved with that, but that's just part of the team going to parents. That's more of a low income in the schools. We equip a community to provide that for their communities. Adventures in Odyssey, you guys all know that one, and that we hope to eventually have some parenting resources with the Adventures in Odyssey stories. That's down the way. I think they're already doing 2021, so it's hard to keep up with them. Clubhouse Junior, new logo coming for Clubhouse for Club Junior, so be looking for that. That's exciting. This is a brand new logo for Focus on the Family Clubhouse this past year. Both won awards 2 years in a row now, first and second place. And what I've been told is that's actually more unusual than an NBA team repeating as champions. So they've done a great job in the last 2 years in the EPA, being voted number 1 and number 2. And this is part of our team here at Focus. And then the Plugged In team continues to provide some great content. We're testing out a vodcast and eventually, hopefully, more Facebook Live from them. They have a huge fan base, as many of you know, and we're trying to enter that strategically so we have good response. And then Brio, of course, continue to build that and collaborate between the teams on the development of Brio. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'm sure it's time for lunch, right, or something? Close? Okay. All right. Thank you.
So our parenting program's in good hands? Danny, thank you. Well, we have, why don't we all stand up? Just to get a little stretch. You know, it occurs to me, Danny was born in Mexico City, and that is one place that really needs our prayers right now. They're suffering terribly there. People in Puerto Rico are suffering terribly, people in Florida, people in Houston. So just remember to pray for those as we go through our day. Danny also, we have an employee that I used to work closely with. He's not here anymore, but one day his wife walked in and said, you know what, I'm kind of done. Get out. A focused family, can you imagine? And they had 2 kids, and he kept working here as they went through that horrible process. And I would always say, I would meet with him occasionally, and I would always say, how are your kids doing? The kids were like 8 and 10 or something. I say, how are your kids doing? He said, you know, they're doing okay. They talked to Danny. So they were spending time with Danny, and he was using his 2 counseling hours a year, and then Danny also has private practice. He said, they're talking to Danny. They're doing okay. So Danny, thank God. Okay, we'll have a sit down. We're going to have one more quick video, and then we'll close.
When I started working at Focus on the Family 9 years ago, I really had no idea what an amazing impact it was going to have on me personally. Shortly after I started working here, my personal life just kind of fell apart. My husband Steve joined the military. It was a result of 9/11. The journey that we've had together with me as a military spouse has been a good one. We have 3 children. Our oldest son, Jordan, is actually in the Air Force and is stationed in Germany right now. And then we have 2 children in high school, Alexa and Marshall. The story that I want to share with you today is really about Marshall, but it affected the entire family and even our extended family. My husband Steve is a combat medic and has been deployed 3 times during the course of his time in the military. Since we've lived here, he has done 2 one-year deployments to Iraq. After his second tour, he came back with severe PTSD and a brain injury, and unfortunately didn't really receive the help he needed. And exactly a year later, deployed again to Iraq. And obviously that is going to have impact on a family unit. You can't really get around it, but for some reason, his absences and the result of his PTSD had much more of an impact on Marshall, who is our youngest son. Marshall was 6 at the time that this kind of all started, and it really became quickly apparent that he had different needs than his brother and sister, and that Steve's absences and the lack of relationship with his father really impacted his day-to-day life. He was just starting school. He just started doing some really kind of crazy things that I can actually smile about now, but at the time were difficult for us to deal with. He would hide under desks frequently when he didn't like what the teacher was saying or doing. He flushed his math book down the toilet because he didn't want to do math that day, and some of his reasoning kind of was a little bit wacky. During this time, Steve was actually deployed, so his dad wasn't in the picture. I was kind of a single mom raising 3 kids and making a lot of those decisions by myself. Decisions that, as a parent, you don't want to have to make. It was decisions like, does he need to see a psychiatrist? Are we at that point? Does he need professional help? We ended up finding a psychiatrist through the military, and that kind of now became a much bigger deal. We went through multiple tests, multiple evaluations. He was evaluated, I was evaluated as his mother, as his parent, and the decisions that I was making, I felt kind of judged by, and he ended up, because his behavior just wasn't getting any better, we made the really difficult decision to have him go on medication. He was given multiple diagnoses, each one a little bit worse than the first. So we started with attention deficit disorder, which led to bipolar disorder. And along with that came a medication cocktail of various medications, each one a little bit stronger than the first, and finally at the point where those medications were actually locked up in the pharmacy and were considered narcotic. His behavior got worse. And in fact, it got so much worse, that he set a couple of fires. Because he was 10, he was, the police and the fire department had to get involved. And he had to go to court. The psychiatrist really encouraged us to send him up to Denver to a therapy group for boys in the age range of 8 to 12 who were fire setters. I always said he wasn't a fire setter, he just set a fire, but because that's just seen as such a dangerous kind of direction for a child with mental health issues to go down, we tried to do everything we could to at least be able to say we did what we were told to do, we did as much as we could. You might think that would be the worst thing that a family could go through, but actually, shortly after the fire setting incident, things really, really changed for the absolute worst. And Marshall wouldn't go into school one day, and he ran out into the road. And when I told him, Marshall, you need to be careful, you're going to get hit, he said, I don't care if I live. When you hear a child say that, your whole life just changes in that instant. We ended up sending him down to Pueblo to the inpatient child facility down there. We left Marshall at the hospital, crying, sobbing actually, and it was probably the single hardest thing I've ever done, to walk away from my child. When you hear people say, oh, that's so heartbreaking, that story's so heartbreaking, I literally felt like my heart was breaking. It hurt. There were people here who knew every intricate detail of what was going on. But there were many people who just knew that I was struggling and that my family was really falling apart. And I know those people prayed just as much. They didn't need to know all of those details to be supportive. And so Marshall went from being a special needs child, part of the mental health system, part of the juvenile court system, charged with second-degree arson, to a child that is thriving, that is no longer special needs, that got all A's on his report card. It's a miracle that I give all the glory to God for it. I'm so thankful for these four walls. I'm thankful for the friendships that I made during that most difficult time. And I'm thankful for the people here that really lived out the mission of Focus on the Family.
Does it make you proud to work at a place like Focus? Ruth, that's tremendous. Wow. There are millions of people around the country, around the world, going through things like that. But it comes home when you know one of them. It comes home when you are one of them. Wow, what a testimony. Thank you for sharing that. My little boy's been struggling really bad the last few months, especially at school, and won't do his homework, tears up papers, and he's mad at the world. And there's a parent in this room who has a child in my kids' class, and that parent just came up to me at the break and said, boy, my child just thinks your little boy's special. I needed to hear that so bad today. Wow. It's all about helping, hurting people. Sorry, I didn't plan this. Well, okay, we've seen history, we've seen transition, Focus 2.0, culture, children, marriage, parenting, and now we come to the most important part. It's all about you. I'm wearing a little pin that Ruth is going to pass out to everyone, and this pin has a piece of the puzzle, and it's called the missing piece, because the missing piece is you. We're here to reconnect. Some of you are new, some of you have been here a long time. 20, 30 years, but it's about you. If you were at the stand-up Monday, you heard me talking about a conversation I had with a Focus broadcast guest who's dying very soon, Colonel Coble. And he said, I think you're all terrific, the guy who cleans the parking lot and every one of you. Well, whatever we do here, we fit in this puzzle. No matter what your job is, you help children like that. You help marriages. You help the quarterbacks go out and lead. And Jim Daly go out and lead, and you help Focus change lives. Because that's what we do here. This Focus can be a launching point. Some people come here and don't stay very long, and they go out and become the Speaker of the Colorado House, or they go out and run for Congress and become congressmen. Some people are here. Ken Windebank, our COO, started in the mailroom 20-some years ago. Jim Daly started as a donor specialist, going out and meeting with our great friends around the country, and we have a few of those in the room right now. Jim Daly ended up 16, 17 years later as the president of Focus. So we don't know what our story. I came here thinking I would be here a couple years and go back to Washington, D.C. Found a wife, found kids. You never know what's going to happen when you come to Focus. But we're all looking for our individual role, and they're all important. They are all important. So let's close our eyes and think, Lord, what is my role here? What do you have for me here? Will I be glorifying you at Focus 20 years from now? Will I be glorifying you somewhere else? Will I be glorifying you in the same job I'm doing now, or will it be something else? But Lord, the main thing is, I want to glorify you. Now, Lord, I pray for each person in this room. I ask you to bless them, speak to them, reinvigorate them to serve families across the world, to serve children, to serve the fatherless, the orphans, to serve the preborn and giving them a chance to live, to serve marriages, and to serve families, to serve the culture. Lord, thank you for an opportunity to be here at Focus on the family. May we all embrace our role, and we give you all the praise and all the glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.